So, Chris, fishing's been a huge part of your life, right? So how long have you been fishing for?
Oh, geez, I probably first started fishing in the mid '80s. You know, I lived in Rockaway Beach, right off the beach, and you know, all my family in one way or another was involved in the fishing industry, whether they were surf casters or party boat operators, captains. So yeah, since I was really young.
And who was like a big influence in your fishing career? I know your uncle was.
Yeah, I mean, my father was in a part, but he was more of like a pastime fisherman. You know, it was just like a hobby. He enjoyed doing it. Well, my uncle Billy was really, he was a fanatic, you know, and he was a surf caster. And, you know, he just is equally obsessed as we are, you know, and that's really who got me. And he and I, we both clicked because, you know, we both were obsessed about it, and he really taught me a lot, you know.
I like to use the word fanatic, right? Because we're fanatics, dude. We love it.
Yep.
And you're considered, like, your love for fishing has brought also a hobby and a part-time job. You're a fanatical lure builder. Why'd you start building lures?
You know, I get asked that question a lot, and I think, you know, and I've given a lot of different answers, and it's just, you know, there's a lot of things in my life that brought me to the point of where I'm at, but the main driving force is just the obsession, you know, led me, you know, to being obsessed about fishing, to being obsessed about lure building. And it was really my obsession of fishing that when the off season came around, I had nothing to do. I mean, there were so many times I greased my reels and sharpened my hooks and did everything that I just started tinkering in it. And it really, you know, it was partly out of necessity, but it was more out of just my obsession really of fishing really just took me into like doing something in the off season, and that was lure building.
Now, you don't just build lures like tie bucktails or pour plastics. You make them out of wood. Like you're an artist. You hand carve lures. Like why do you do that? Like why out of wood?
You know, I think wood, it reminds me a little bit of like a striped bass, you know. There's probably better species, there's better things to make lures out of, like plastic. You know, there's harder fighting fish than a striped bass, but striped bass has character, and so does wood. And wood it's natural, it's wild, just like a fish. And it has all those little nuances that fish have. You know, why did this bass do this night? Why aren't they biting? Wood is the same way. You know, it's natural and it's wild, just like a fish. And as much as you try to tame it and you try to figure it out, you can't. You know, it is wood, and it's going to react as something that is living. You know, and I feel like that's just really why. Again, and there's a little bit of tradition. This is how it started. You know, our fishery, you know, for striped bass, it started with guys fishing, you know, first, you know, metal and tins, and then it went into, you know, guys building out of wood. And there's just something about it. You know, it has character. You know, you can definitely catch, and you can have more consistency using plastic. And I fish plastic. I fish soft plastic. I fish hard plastics.
Yeah.
I mean, but if I were to choose a way that I want to catch a striped bass, it's going to be on wood.
I've seen it. You're fanatical about your lures are over the top large.
Yeah. And there's something, wood, just like, you know, striped bass can teach you a lot about other types of fishing. You know, wood can teach you, I think, more when you start off building. It can teach you about building because you really have to pay really close attention to those details, because each species of wood is going to react differently, just even within the tree itself. You know, when I go to, you know, to the yard where I actually go to like a specialty place, and I drive the guy nuts because I'm climbing up in the rafters and I pull boards down and I'm looking at the lines, and I won't touch anything. I look at vertical grain, and I'm looking at all that different things. And I think that teaches you a lot about lure making, and even within, when you're making lures, and you try to be as consistent as you can, and that's difficult to do with wood. But you start to pick up little things, you know, even though you're shooting for consistency, you're always going to have little variations off of each piece of wood. And it's within those variations that you start to learn, like, oh, that's what they wanted. You know, when I first started building, you know, I wanted lures that would just had crazy action, and the striped bass, they don't want that all the time. You know, sometimes they do when you're blitz fishing or you're daytime fishing, but at night, a lot of times it's just a little bit of a subtle action. And, you know, working with wood, you start to, you notice those if you're attentive to it, you know, and you start noticing those little differences. And then you can, you know, when a fish, you know, you might have a metal lip that's just slightly heavier than the previous one you made, even though you did everything exactly the same, you know. and it swims just a little bit deeper, just slightly. I'm talking like the slightest bit, like, instead of sitting hot, like out of the water that much, it's just below the surface. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's what they want. You go back and you weigh that lure and you're like, oh, because that's what they're eating. That's what I'm going to shoot for. So I think that's why I build out of wood. It's character, you know, and it's like fishing. It always changes, the fishery always changes, and, you're trying to put that puzzle together. And I like wood, I like working with the material,
So in obviously the fishing world's full of characters, right?
Oh yeah.
Everybody, all of us. And for some reason, guys that love lures are drawn to your lures. Like you said, fanatical. Why? What is it? Do you think it's the attention to detail, the paint job, the size? Like, what about your wood lures is?
Yeah, I think it's just the time that I put in, just like fishing, And I think a good fisherman makes a really good lure builder, because you notice those little things, and I notice those little things, and I don't rush. Guys know it's hard to get my lures because I take my time. And that probably also is a reason why guys want them, because guys always want what they can't have. And I don't mass produce, I never will. And I've talked about going to plastic, but I probably won't, because I really enjoy sitting down and working with wood. But I think it's the attention to detail. And I think a lot of guys, they want them because of the hype, and then I get all these reactions once a guy gets it in his hands and he's like, holy cow, man, the pictures you showed or whatever, it didn't do it justice. This is, it's unbelievable. And I enjoy that. I enjoy getting the feedback, and I enjoy spending time and really, I make my own eyes. I do everything myself. I don't outsource anything. Everything I do myself. And
how fulfilling is it for you when you get a picture at 3 o'clock in the morning with this slob and your lure in its mouth from like somebody from, you're from New York, somebody from Massachusetts, somebody from New Jersey, somebody from Puerto Rico is like, yo, like something that you made now is alive somewhere else in the world, catching something else that's alive.
It's the best feeling. And it's really silly, but like as I'm building lures, like I'll have like them lined up, because I'm going through different phases, and I'll look at them and I'll be like, which one of you is going to get a 50, And, so it really is. It's even more satisfying than getting them on your own to a certain point. And I do, like, I get my phone, like, especially in the season, like all of a sudden I'll get like a ping, or like a message at like, 4 a.m, and it's some guy like sending me, he couldn't help himself, like just sending me pictures like, dude, I don't, and it's a great feeling. And it's funny because like I don't make that many of them, and I'll actually recognize like a plug, like I'll remember making that plug.
So do you realize that while you're fishing your secret spot here, you're really fishing every night all over the world?
Yeah,
there's a little piece of you.
I never thought of it that way.
You're fishing everywhere, like.
Yeah, and that's what I like too is that I've been doing it long enough now for a little over 20 years, and so even though I don't build a lot, there's a lot of them out there, and I like the fact, not to be dark, but one day when I'm long gone, those plugs are going to still be out there fishing. And my son already shows an interest in it.
I see the pictures.
He gets behind the lathe, not with it on. He's only 2, but he's already, because he sees that I'm so interested in it, and he can't help but to be interested in it. And I can't wait. Not that I can't wait for when I'm gone, but I think that I'm leaving behind a little bit of a legacy, even with our, not that it's with our own little fanatics, that we are, but that one day that my son will be getting those pings, not only on the lures that he made, but maybe long after I'm gone on the lures that I made,
Yeah.
So, a funny story is I was fishing in Montauk, and this is years ago, and I was fishing this little stubby needle that I had made, and I made it out of ipe, which is a Brazilian hardwood, and it was made out of the boardwalk from Sandy. When after Sandy in Rockaway, they were throwing all the ipe out, and I literally took pieces of the boardwalk and I made this lure out of it. And it just kind of had like a little bit of a sentimental thing for me, because it was my hometown. We were devastated by Sandy, and so when I fished it, it just meant something. And I was fishing with our good friend Doug, and it just was catching over and over again. No monsters, but it was just one of those nights. Weren't big fish. I was with a good friend. I was fishing that plug. And I lost it that night. Sandy was, I think, 2012. About 3 years ago, a guy contacts me and he's like, hey, is this one of your plugs? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I found it in Montauk. and he found it over. I lost it on the south side. He found it over the north side. But like I lost it, somewhere around 2013 or so, and he found it, and it still had paint on it, and I said, holy, it was still out there, still, and he says, yeah, he goes, it was washed up. And I said, well, fish it. He goes, no, man. He's like, I want you to have it. And he sent it back to me. So it was kind of like getting my buddy back, And again, I don't know that I would feel that way with plastic, Again, because it's wood, it's alive. And a lot of times I look at my plug bag and I look down in there and I'm like, all right, taking my buddies out, Because again, I remember every lure in my bag. I remember making each one of them, So it's
cool, dude. Sun's going down. It's time to take some buddies.
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad we were finally able to meet up and get everything to align.
Let's get them.
All right, brother.